Welcome to another edition of the Food Systems podcast brought to you by the Forum for the Future of Agriculture. I'm Alex Turk, and in a reversal of his usual position, I'm putting Mark Titterington, co-founder and director of the Forum, in the hot seat. Who better to ask him about his involvement in the Forum and to ask him what is next for him personally? Well, Mark, welcome.
Great to be here. Thanks, Alex.
And as a co-founder, you've been with the Forum since the start in 2008. And in that time, of course, it's grown to what it is today. Can you briefly take us back and walk us through the path of progress? And particularly, Mark, what do you personally think have been the most significant changes, particularly in recent years?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a journey, as many of these things are. When I think back to 2008 and why did we start to do this? The idea was to try and bring agriculture and environmental audiences and stakeholders together. Our view was that agriculture and environment are inextricably linked, and yet at that time, and to an extent still today, the level of polarization, still exists. And I think we started off with this attempt to build a dialogue, an understanding, a connection, try and surface some of the challenges, and hopefully come up with the solutions. And for many of the first years in the forum, that's what we focused on, was just building trust and confidence, where we could, that this was a worthwhile platform to engage in. I think we were very fortunate to have Franz Fischler chair the forum in its early years. I think when Janusz Potocznik became chairman in 2015, we had a step change. That was that was probably one of the first inflection points, as we started to think about the forum not just as a convener of people, but a convener of influence. And I think at that point, we started to expand the partnership to beyond the two founding partners of European Landowners Organization and Syngenta, and to bring in different actors, change agents, if you like, in the up and down the food value chain, the agri-food value chain, and also to extend it to the NGOs, both those more located in Europe and those with perhaps more of a global perspective. So I think that was a very significant step change for the forum. And I think the other thing then I would probably point to is we started in that mode of convener with influence, starting to try to serve as new ideas, new thinking, new solutions that came out of the forum. And that manifested itself in some of the kind of early publications that we did, certainly around regenerative agriculture and sustainable intensification, sustainable productivity in agriculture, and ultimately manifested itself in the call to action. So it has been a real journey, and probably the last thing I would say is just the expansion of the global focus of the forum, obviously founded in Brussels with an EU focus, but increasingly over these last 10 years or so, we've expanded that first with the transatlantic perspective. We're very much involved in the collaboration platform on agriculture, and then more globally to bring in some of our partners in Canada and Australia and elsewhere.
And I've seen it grow through the years, Mark. I mean, as you say, transatlantic, we had one that focused on the SDGs after the Paris Agreement. We had an African view one year, I seem to remember. And of course, we had to keep that momentum going during COVID times.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we have really lived a journey, as you say there. I think like for many of us, the COVID period was challenging, but it also forced us to be more innovative. I suppose that there are so many memories that you can point to. One of them was transforming this hotel room, the ballroom of this hotel room, into a grand studio that we were basically able to run the entire conference, forum conference from online digitally during the COVID period. And people sometimes ask me what was one of the best ones that you did, and I really point to that one because of the engagement that we had, the people that showed up. It was really a breakthrough, and I think it also enabled us then to think differently about how we were going to reach our audiences, not just in Europe, not just in Brussels, but across the world.
And I mean, it did. I mean, there were 3,000 people during COVID, 90 countries, I think over 100 speakers.
Right.
It's been extraordinary. Mark, you mentioned the call to action. And when we think about that, again, breakthroughs, step change moments, how would you characterize that? And do you think it's still relevant with new partners, how that's integrated now?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I think it was a real step out moment for the forum. I think at that point up to that point we'd perhaps been content to be a kind of receptacle is probably the wrong word, a place where people could put forward their ideas, thinking and solutions, but we hadn't necessarily manifested that in what the forum was prepared to stand by. And I think, when we talk and we go back to the origins, the agriculture and the environment coming together, we probably should have done that sooner. But it was probably the right moment for us building up to that. The partnership had expanded. It had obviously become, more diverse. So we were really able to represent all the different views. And I think, Yanez's role needs to be given a lot of credit for this, saying, well, what do we actually believe and stand by? And I think, two things came out of that kind of commitment to a resilient, more sustainable, climate smart, nature positive food and agriculture system. So looking at it much more holistically. And then I think, when you look at the commitments, scaling regenerative agriculture, value and accounting for natural capital, incentivizing our farmers and land managers, both public and private, to invest in the natural capital as well as in their productive, capability. And I think, both of those obviously kind of go together. The sustainability and transparency in the supply chain, reaching consumers. When I step back and we looked at that a little bit with the partners, at the beginning of this year, when we made our communication to Commissioner Hansen, they're really as relevant today as they've ever been. And I think sometimes not we, but all of us in the food system, we can move from one thing to the other. But for us, it's really been the kind of North Star and direction upon which we've been able to build all our work.
So you have those 7 commitments, you have the annual report, and they're the building blocks, as you say, to resilient, sustainable food systems. Commitment 7, the collaboration and partnership, integrating the partners, this expanded partner base, which, as you say, is so important. That's been a strong focus and an important focus as well, hasn't it?
No, no, it has. I mean, it's enabled us, I think, to really draw on that expertise and experience that the partners have got. And I should also say that I referenced it earlier. We've always been about trying to engage change agents, companies and NGOs in their particular space that were leaders that would lead both across the value chain, but also in their particular part of it. And so I think, we've always had that wealth of experience and expertise to be able to draw on. I think that came out in some of the early work that we did on regenerative agriculture. As some people know, we spent a lot of the last year looking at how do you take a systemic approach to financing the transition, something that involves the public sector, not just in terms of subsidies, but accounting rules in terms of creative use of the tax system, how you put that together with private incentives for nature credits, for carbon, for sustainability premiums. There's so much that we can do, and it really does require everybody to be able to build this and play a part in building it. And I think, we've got a bit of a microcosm of that within the forum of the different parties and actors that are going to be needed in order for us to be able to make the transition that I think we all want to see.
And as you say, a convener and then a convener of influence. And certainly, I know with Yanis at the helm, as you said, the need for urgency in that the how to bring action and ideas, pragmatic, practical views together has been an extraordinary path of progress. You have, of course, been the face of the forum for the last few years, moderating events in the regions and hosting, of course, the regular podcasts. So, Mark, I want to ask now, what's next for you personally?
Yeah, I mean, just before I go there, Alex, I just pick up on that point that you talked about urgency. Um, I think as I come to the end of my period in the current role that I've had with the forum and transition into something new, you kind of look back a little bit and I share the frustrations of many of us in the agri-food system about the pace of change that we've been able to affect. I think a lot of what has been done has been necessary, but is not yet sufficient. And there are many opportunities ahead. I've never been more excited actually about the possibilities for the agri-food system to take account of the new innovation, the new technologies, the new practices. I don't think I've ever seen as much interest from beyond the value chain, beyond the agri-food system, in in the agri-food system and helping make that transition work. And that brings with it a lot of investment that I think farmers and land managers are going to be able to take advantage of. So I'm extremely hopeful about where we might get to. But it would be remiss of me to say that the job is done, because it's not. There's so much that is still needs to be done, and still, if I'm honest, a little bit of frustration on my part, as others have, about where we are and the progress that we've made, given that urgency that you referred to. So I just say that, ahead of kind of, looking at what's next for me, as you asked it. Well, I had a tremendous opportunity to take on the Director General position at Spirits Europe, which is an organization that I've long admired, and always, thought to myself, if that position ever came up, it would be one that I'd be interested in. There's a fantastic group of companies and organizations, associations within it. It's a great industry grounded in agriculture. And I do believe plays a very positive role in our society. So I'm really looking forward at taking that on. Some big meaty challenges, obviously, within there, but it's a great opportunity, and I'm looking forward to that. Obviously, it means that my role in the forum changes substantively, but it's an organization. The forum is an organization that will always be close to my heart, given my history with it.
I know that you will still support the forum in some way, and also it's great to hear that you are that glass half full kind of guy.
Yeah. Well, I think I think we have to be. Again, these are disruptive times. We can either retreat into the kind of defensive crouch, or we can try and seize the opportunities that always comes out of disruption, as we even found in COVID times. So yeah, I mean, I'll join the advisory council, and that will give me an opportunity to continue to opine on what's happening in the forum, and hopefully make a contribution, albeit clearly in a much more limited, but still hopefully impactful way, This, as I say, there's still so much to do for the forum, and I think it's been left in great hands. I'm delighted that Emma Mikosh is going to take on my role. It's a great team in house. The partnership, if you look across the organization, as I've said already, is full of wealth and experience. We've got some great, active members of the advisory council as well. I'm sure we'll put their shoulder to the wheel. And as much as anything else, Alex, I'm delighted that you're taking on my seat as the moderator for the Food Systems podcast, which has really been another kind of labor of love for me over these last few years, and it's been fabulous to talk to so many great and interesting people. I shall miss that a lot, but I know it's in safe hands.
Thank you, Mark. And well, of course, you are a hard act to follow. On the podcasts, I think, more than 70, you've had such an eclectic mix of policymakers, economists to farmers, environmental experts, government advisors, entrepreneurs. You've had worldviews, and you've had local projects. I think that the quote that I'd like to use as we wrap this up and look to a highlight from you would be a Churchill quote that says, "The only basis for security is diversity." There have been so many diverse views and voices that have been brought together in open dialogue at the forum and on the podcasts. So, Mark, if you were to highlight one thing during the recent years as something that you particularly stand out, I know you've given us a few memories, but also that you're particularly proud of, what would it be?
Yeah, it's difficult to nail it down to one, and as you know, I find it impossible to be that concise. So I'm actually going to give you three. I think the first one is I'm just so proud of the fact that we have collectively been able to expand this partnership within the forum. And so many great organizations have decided to work and jump into what we've been doing, and so many of them are now long-standing contributors to the forum. I think that says itself, and I think that's something that we can all be extremely proud of. And I think, linked to that is the fact that the forum has become such a trusted and a respected player, not only in Europe but globally. I know we have the interaction with the EU institutions. The work that we did on the transatlantic agenda, as I think, has built trust and credibility on both sides of the aisle, actually, in Washington and in the US, and then establishing the Global Forum for Farm Policy Innovation, being able to build those relationships with Farm Foundation, Canadian Agri-Food Policy Institute, Australian Farm Institute, and others, and bringing organizations like OECD in to work with us. And we had that event in Paris 18 months ago, 2 years ago, where that was a real highlight, bringing together member states and the different organizations to look at what we could do. I'll give you one very personal reflection, which actually came just in the last couple of weeks on this podcast, actually. If people haven't listened to it, really do go back and listen to Jacques Naudet. He inspired me because I think that's what we're aiming at. South African guy, played professional rugby in France. At the end of his career, inspired by what he'd done in community gardens and where he played rugby, decided to move to Portugal and he bought some land in central Portugal, generally eroded, not in the greatest of shape. And he got to work adopting regenerative agriculture practices. And he's cultivated walnuts and almonds there. He's built a business which is now paying back. He's restored the land, the health of the soil, biodiversity, water, and he's engaged his family, his friends, and now people from beyond that to come and join him. If that's not a reflection of the economic, social, and environmental transformation that we're looking at, I don't know what is. And the fact that he did it with not much of his own money, almost none of his own money, with public funding co-financed by the EU, if I remember correctly, and whatever else he's been able to raise. Again, when we think about finance and the transition, looking at it through that lens, I think that reveals the possibility of hope that we have, and is what I would ask us all to hold on to. I certainly shall. It was an incredibly inspiring story, and I hope people have the opportunity to listen to it.
I've listened to it, of course, and it is a wonderful guy and a young guy, which I think is
Right.
also important. You know, Soil and Land Management Award or commendation, I think, given again another part of the range of work that the forum does. I'm very glad that the podcast ended on a high with such an inspiring one, Mark. So, well, listen. Thank you for answering rather than asking the questions on this edition of the Food Systems podcast. And on behalf of everyone involved in the last 18 years and counting of the forum, we say to you, Mark, a heartfelt thank you for all the work, both in front and behind the scenes at the forum. We do, of course, wish you every success, much fulfillment in your new endeavours. We're so glad you're still a part of it. We know it's not goodbye, but we will end this podcast now by saying thank you, Mark, and au revoir.
Thank you. It's been a great pleasure.
You've been listening to another edition of the Food Systems podcast brought to you by the Forum for the Future of Agriculture. It's been a pleasure having you with us. Please join us again next time.